are. We want to get to know you. We expect that we will be connecting and knowing each other for a long time to come, because we are all, as you are all aware, we are all working towards something we call reparations, something we call restitution, something we call recognition, et cetera, et cetera. I see my good, right honorable friend and colleague, Tiffany. Your hand is up, Tiffany.
What's up? It's Dominica.
Dominica, I'm sorry, Dominica. Thank you, thank you for helping. Yeah, I'm gonna need help with the pronunciation and the words, Tiffany. So please come in and help me do that as often as possible. Thank you so much for joining. And in a moment here or so, I'm gonna get us started, really with some quick intros, and then we're gonna kick it off and jump right into what we're here to do. Good morning to you all again. Thank you for being here. For those who don't know, my name is Chris Lobster. I am the lead organizer and advocate with the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, also known as, affectionately known as, lovingly known as CJEC. CJEC, we are, where do I start? We are awesome. I call us the first and still and only statewide, grassroots, California-based and born and bred organization, born and built for reparations and reparative justice, specifically for Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved in this country here, these United States. In 2019 and 2020, we helped write the final version of the law that became the California Reparations Task Force, AB 3121. We then worked with that state reparations task force, which was a first of its kind in the state, first of its kind in the country's first ever state level reparations task force. We then worked with it for 2 or so years to do all the things that state task force was supposed to do and expected to do, such as document the harm of enslavement and slavery here in California. Yes, there was slavery right here where I'm sitting in California. There was slavery right here where I'm sitting in the city of Sacramento. Document the harm of slavery. Make it known of that California that has a history and connection to slavery and enslavement. Educate the public about what it learned, and then make reparations recommendations. Those were the tasks of that state reparations task force, and we were happy and thankful to work with that task force for 2 years or so. And then after that, and through then until now, we've been working to make reparations real. You can study reparations, you can research reparations, but we want to make it real in the real world, in the real lives, and tangibly in people's material life and well-being. And so that's what we're working on now through state policy and work like we're doing today. Our work really does sit at the intersection of genealogy, data, advocacy, and legislation, because we believe that lineage specifically is a critical foundation. Lineage and genealogy are critical foundations to how reparations are understood and ultimately delivered. We're really honored, of course, to be in this conversation with you today. I want to start, though, with a simple question that I think is going to guide a lot of what we talk about this morning. What is owed to the families behind the legacies of those who were enslaved and emancipated from chattel slavery in this country? And we're going to talk today about a specific instance and a specifically powerful example of the answers to that question. And the folks who got me will have more to say about it. But we're going to talk today and focus today on the life and legacy of David Drake, better and also known as Dave the Potter. So today's conversation is about bringing some really important pieces together: lineage, lived experience, and policy. We're going to start with genealogy, and I'm joined by some very, very special guests today too. And then we're going to go right into some family history. And we have a special guest that we did not tell people was going to be here, but we are excited to have this special guest, the surprise guest, join us as well. But without further ado, again, for those who are coming in the chat, thank you for joining. Let us know where you're coming in from. If you're here in the United States, let us know what city, what state you're in. If you're outside of the States, let us know what country you are coming from also. Okay, let me get to the real reason people are here. You don't want to hear me talk. You want to hear from the people who are knee-deep in the genealogy and in the family history work. I'm going to talk a little bit later about the policy and action, how you can support what we're talking about today. But I want to start today, of course, by introducing our first speaker. That is none other than Kelly Farrish. Kelly Farrish is a professional genealogist and the founder of RGI, the Reparative Genealogy Institute. a firm dedicated to tracing and restoring the lineages of African American, Black American freedmen families impacted by slavery. She specializes in genealogy and for forensic and reparative genealogy specifically, using historical records, archival research, and advanced methods to reconstruct family histories that were disrupted or erased. Her work often supports not just individual families, but broader efforts connected to reparations, historical accountability, and lineage-based policy. I'll have you know, Dr. Farrish was one of the witnesses who testified to that California State Reparations Task Force that I mentioned earlier, on the question of genealogy, on the question of lineage, on the question of eligibility for reparations in California. And Kelly has worked with clients and families and communities across the country, including the Drake family that we are going to be highlighting and focusing on today, helping people document their ancestry, reclaim their stories, establish connections that have both a personal and legal significance. Today, though, she's going to ground us in how this work actually happens and why it matters so much. Kelly, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you. I'm going to get your slides up and running. Let's do it.
So much. I am so honored to be at this forum, and I am very excited about the direction that we are taking as a collective, especially with the declaration that was made on March the 25th, that chattel enslavement was the worst human disaster in the history of the world. And so I think it's very important to talk about that real world example that we have of the actual practice of asking and negotiating and then finally receiving reparative justice. And so I am going to start with my presentation. Thank you very much. And we'll let that, we're going to put this in full view. Okay. Okay. And so let's start. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Kelly Farrish, and I am, yes, it is okay to take screenshots. Yes. Good morning and thank you. My name is Kelly Farrish, and I am a genealogist, historian, and author. And I am honored to be presenting to you as part of the 5th session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. This session convenes under the theme, Expanding the Human Rights of People of African Descent, under the 2nd International Decade. And tomorrow, not tomorrow, but later on in the week, the Palace des Nations Panel 2 will take up a question that sits at the very center of that theme: reparatory justice, cultural heritage, museums, and restitution. What we're bringing to this space tonight is not a theoretical case, it is a documented one. It is a story about what expanding human rights actually looks like, not in declaration, but in practice, in clay, in archives, in a family that survived 200 years of American history to stand before us today and say, we are here and we are asking for what belongs to us. We can go over to the next slide. In 1818, a 17-year-old boy was mortgaged as financial collateral in Edgefield District, South Carolina. The document did not record his full name. It called him simply a Negro boy, Dave, about 17 years old. He was valued at $400. His body, hands, future pledged against a debt that he had no voice in creating. That document is one of the first records we have of him, and it tells us something important. From the very beginning, the legal system treated Dave as property, not as a person. But Dave had other ideas. He became a potter, a skilled stoneware craftsman working in one of the most technically sophisticated ceramic producing regions in the antebellum South, probably the world. The Edgefield District kilns produced massive stoneware jars, large format vessels used throughout the plantation economy for food storage, meat preservation, fermentation, and transport. These were not decorative objects at the time that they were made. They were industrial. They were a functioning piece of the slaveholding agricultural system that could not operate without them. Dave was central to that production for nearly nearly 40 years. An estate inventory from that district describes him as an excellent stoneware turner, listed alongside furniture and livestock. His skill recorded only because it increased the dollar value of the appraiser's line. In 1834, the very year South Carolina made it a criminal offense to teach an enslaved person to read or write. Next slide. Dave pressed a word into wet clay on the shoulder of one of those jars. The word was concatenation, from the Latin concatenare, to link together in a chain. He was not supposed to know that word. It was illegal to teach enslaved people to read and write, and that word was not used in common speech at the time. In fact, he was not supposed to know to write any words at all. And yet there it was in his own handwriting, pressed permanently into clay, essentially indestructible. He was naming what he was starting, a chain. Next slide. Over the next 30 years, Dave inscribed more than 100 stoneware vessels. He wrote dates, he wrote his name, he wrote verse, he proofread his own work. There is a jar from 1859 when he used a caret mark to insert two words he had omitted. A caret, which is what editors use when they are writing their pieces. He was not imitating writing. He wasn't just learning to write. He was practicing it, which meant that Dave was very educated while he was enslaved. He chose clay deliberately. Paper burned, newspapers rotted. The men who owned Dave could tear up a letter or burn a book. But a stoneware jar fired at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit becomes essentially indestructible. The alkaline glaze fuses with the clay body into something closer to glass than earth. Dave was a man who had spent decades watching clay transform into fire, into something that outlasted flesh. He knew what he was making. These were messages designed to outlast his enslavement, written to the people who would come after him. He wrote on one of the jars, "I wonder where is all my relation, friendship to all and every nation." He was writing this while enslaved families were being separated and sold south by the hundreds of thousands. His question was not rhetorical, it was investigative. Next slide. Where is my family? Where have they been taken? And then he extended it outward as if to say, I cannot find my own people, so I will claim all people. I will belong to the whole world if I cannot belong to my own family. In 1857, the year the Dred Scott decision declared that people of African descent had no rights the white man was bound to respect, Dave wrote, I made this jar for cash, though it is called lucratrash. This particular jar is so important because this is one of the jars that was returned back to the family. He knew what his labor was worth. He knew what was called treasure and what was called trash, and he knew which category the men who owned him had assigned to him. He wrote until at least 1862, when the world was finally breaking up. Then, as far as the record shows, he stopped. Emancipation came. He took a surname of his own choosing, Drake, but he was an old man by then, in his 60s, and the jars he had made over 4 decades were already moving through a world that had no mechanism for preserving his connection to them. He had no legal standing to dictate where his work went. He had never had that standing. And when he died in the late 1870s, the pots were already separating from the family that had watched them being made. What followed was a long, dark period, next slide, in the provenance of these objects. For, just a moment, is this the right side? For jars inscribed in the 1850s, this is not the right slide, so go back to the last one, please. Thank you. For the jars inscribed in the 1850s, the documented chain of title typically does not begin until the 1920s or 30s, if that far back. Collectors moved through Edgefield and Aiken counties in the early 20th century, finding vessels on abandoned farms, in barns, at kiln dump sites. They recorded a county of origin, if anything at all. No names, no prior ownership, no connection to the community that had produced them. All of the pots in Edgefield, by the way, they were all made by enslaved potters. Dave is the only potter that we know because he was the only one that had learned to read and write, and he inscribed his jars. The objects entered private hands and then institutional collections with documentation so thin that most museums today cannot produce a complete chain of custody from the moment of creation to the moment of acquisition. It is the provenance problem at the center of every claim the family has made. Chris, if you can do me a favor and find the provenance slide, I think that might be after. Let's see, maybe not. Yes. And so this is the gap that we are talking about. So all of Dave's jars were made while he was enslaved, but when and provenance, just to give you the definition of that word, it is tracing a piece of artwork's title from one person owning it to another. And so it's supposed to start from the date that the artist made the art. But with Dave, for example, the cantonation jar that was made in 1834, provenance for that does not start until the late 20th century. And so there is a gap there. And here's what I want this room to understand about those jars. Dave longed for his family. He said so in clay more than once. He pressed that longing into objects designed to travel. Vessels carried on wagons, shipped on rivers, moved through a trade network that reached across the entire plantation south. He could not go where the jars went because he was enslaved. He could not move freely, but the jars could, and they did. Decades later, those same jars bearing his name and his words and his dates traveled on exhibition tours that reached the East Coast. They reached the cities where his descendants had settled after the Great Migration. The jars that Dave had pressed his longing into, the jars that asked, "Where is all my relation?" traveled east to find the answer. They reached his family. This is not a metaphor. This is a fact. The concatenation he named in 1834, the chain of linked events, each producing the next, had completed one of its longest links. The pots found the people. The people recognized the handwriting, and the question pressed into clay almost 200 years ago finally had an answer standing in front of it. Next slide. We're going to go back to the slide of his descendants. That's right. Thank you. Dave died in the late 1870s in Aiken County, South Carolina. His daughter Carolyn sold as a child to the Lewis Miles family, whose enslavers' initials appear beside Dave's name on jars, raised her children near the land where he had worked. Her son Pierce grew up within miles of the old Lewis Miles pottery operation at Stony Bluff and near what had been called Pottersville. He did not inherit his grandfather's jars. He inherited his grandfather's ground, which doesn't mean that he was passed on property. It just means that the place that Dave lived is where Pierce now lived, his grandson. Pierce Jones was a man who stayed. He bought 28 and a half acres of land in Shaw Township, Aiken County, recorded in his own name at the county courthouse, the same courthouse that at once administered the legal system that classified his grandfather as an enslaved person. Now, him and his brother Bristow, who also appears in the 1870 census in Dave's household, owned the adjacent parcel. Pierce donated an acre of his own land to build a school. He raised a large family. He did not leave. But staying required surviving a sequence of violence and terror, next slide, that I want this room to understand. Thank you. Not as distant history, but as the lived reality of a specific family in a specific county across specific decades, Let me name them in succession. In 1876, the Hamburg Massacre, a white-led paramilitary mob surrounded a Black militia company, executed prisoners who had already surrendered, and killed 5 Black militia members. The man who organized it was elected to the United States Senate 2 months later. The terror was not punished, it was rewarded. 2 months later, the Ellington riot. Hundreds of armed white men rode through Aiken County for days, forcing Black families from their homes at gunpoint, burning property, killing Black men across a wide stretch of the county. Families fled into swamps and woods. Federal estimates put the Black death toll between 30 and over 100. Pierce Jones's family lived in that same territory. In 1859, Benjamin Tillman, who boasted openly of having shot Black men to redeem the state, convened a constitutional convention that effectively erased the Black vote in South Carolina through poll taxes, literacy tests administered selectively by white officials, residency requirements designed to fail. Black voter registration fell from hundreds of thousands to fewer than 3,000 by 1900. Pierce Jones farmed in Aiken County for 6 more decades after that and cast no ballot in any election that governed his life. In the early 1900s, Willie Bristow Jones, who was Pierce's son, was sentenced to the chain gang for stealing a hog, a system that used the criminal code to extract coerced Black labor. Men entered and did not always come out. In some counties, the annual death rate for leased convicts exceeded 20%. Willie came home, but what it cost him to come home, the record does not say. October 1926, a Black tenant farming family named the Lomans, Bertha, Clarence, and Damon, were dragged from the Aiken County jail in the middle of the night by a mob that included the county sheriff. They had just been acquitted or were about to be. The legal system had worked briefly in their favor, so the mob bypassed it. They were driven to a pine thicket just outside of town, just miles from where Pierce Jones farmed his 28.5 acres. Clarence was shot, recaptured, and dragged behind the vehicle. Bertha was shot repeatedly and did not die immediately. She dragged herself along the ground, begging for her life. The mob kept shooting. She was only 27 years old. The NAACP identified 22 mob members, including the sheriff. A grand jury ruled the Lomans had died at the hands of parties unknown. No one was ever charged. A man from the community named William Q., who had heard these stories all his life, later described what the Loman murders meant to the people around him. He said that seeing what had been done, people dragged from a jail and treated as less than animals, and that the county officials took part, taught him something. It kept him, he said, from doing anything. That was the point. The violence was designed to produce exactly that response, and it worked. After 1926, after that happened, the family left. Willie's children, including Daisy Bell, who is Dave's great-great-granddaughter, and Yaba's grandmother, they left and they traveled east. They carried the family's history with them, but they could not carry what they didn't know. They did not know about the man who had pressed his name and his longing into clay and waited for them. These stories didn't pass generationally because of the terror and the violence that they had to remember. So when they left and went east, the purpose of that was to leave the terror of the Deep South and to go someplace where they could have autonomy over their lives. And that is exactly what they did. Next slide. Yes, and so this actually goes back to what I was saying, seeing people dragged from a jail taught him something. It kept him from doing anything. And the severance, they did not know about the jars. So we're going to look at that slide for a moment. I'm going to take you over to the next slide. Excellent. While the family was dispersed, scholars were writing about Dave the Potter. Museums were acquiring his jars. Academic journals were calling him the first known enslaved artist to sign his work, and his descendants had no idea who he was. The connection between the living family and the historical figure of David Drake had been identified and confirmed by multiple genealogists working over years. That foundational research established the documentary framework. Census records, death certificates, deed books, probate files, DNA analysis, each source read against the others until the chain of descent was legible. By the time I was brought in, the family knew who they were descended from. What they needed was what the institution required. That matters. And I want to name it directly because it tells us something essential about what reparations actually require in practice. The Museum of Fine Arts Boston did not accept a claim because the family believed they were descended from David Drake. They accepted it because that descent was documented to a professional evidentiary standard, the genealogical proof standard. A rigorous methodology requiring exhaustive search, complete and accurate citations, analysis of all evidence, including conflicting evidence, and a soundly reasoned written conclusion. My role was to produce and submit that report, to translate the family's history into the language the institution required before it would act. This is the structural insight at the center of this case, and I believe it has implications far beyond one family and one museum. Proof of lineal descent is not incidental to reparations. It is the mechanism. Without a documented, professionally verified genealogical chain connecting living people to the specific historical harm, to the specific enslaved creator, the specific object, the specific community of origin, the claim cannot be evaluated, the institution cannot act, and the restitution cannot happen. Next slide. Genealogy is not a preliminary step before the real work of reparations begins. Genealogy is the work. It is the evidentiary infrastructure on which every successful claim will rest. And in a country where the records of enslaved people were preserved in the documents of ownership rather than in the records of kinship, where archives were built to serve property, not people, that work is both technically demanding and politically urgent. The report I submitted established the Drake family's documented descent from David Drake. And in October of 2025, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston returned 2 jars, next slide, to the family. The Permanent Forum at its 4th session recommended that member states and institutions move to return looted African cultural heritage, property, artifacts, and ancestral remains, and to support their protection through legal safeguards. The Museum of Fine Arts Boston did exactly that. After genealogical research established the chain of descent from the 1818 mortgage through Carolyn Miles, through the Jones family, to living members of Drake's lineage, the museum recognized the descendants and established a collaborative stewardship arrangement. In October 2025, they returned 2 jars. The museum did not do something extraordinary. They did something obvious. They acknowledged that behind the clay there was a person, and that person had a family. What made that possible was not litigation. It was not a new law. It was documented genealogical evidence, institutional willingness to engage, and a framework for a consultation that centered the descendants. This is the model the forum's own recommendations call for. It is not hypothetical. It has been done. The precedent exists, but the MFA Boston chose to do the right thing. Not every institution will make that choice on its own, which is why legislation matters. Next slide. The Antebellum African American Cultural Property Ethical Provenance Art Act. That is a mouthful. I'm the author of proposed legislation in the state of California called the Antebellum African American Cultural Property Ethical Provenance Act. And Chris is going to speak more about that. But I wrote this because of Yaba and his family. because I watched the family do everything right, document their descent, submit their evidence, come forward with patience and with grace, and encounter institutions that felt no obligation to respond, because the MFA Boston's decision, as right as it was voluntary. And voluntary is not a system. Voluntary is a favor. What families like this one deserve is not a favor, it is a framework. The bill is built on a simple premise that cultural property created by enslaved African American artists between 1619 and 1865, property produced under coercion without the creator's legal capacity to convey title, and held today by museums in the state of California and elsewhere, carries with it an ethical provenance obligation that current law does not require institutions to honor. Traditional provenance practice traces the chain of ownership from collector to collector, from institution to institution. It was never designed to ask the prior question: was the original transfer legitimate? Was the creator's community ever consulted? Do living heirs have an interest that the law has simply never required anyone to recognize? And as we have seen with Dave's jars, where the documented chain of title for objects made in the 1830s and the 1850s often does not begin until the 1920s or the 1930s, that provenance gap is itself the evidence of the problem. The absence of a chain of title does not resolve a claim, it raises one. The Antebellum African American Cultural Property Ethical Provenance Act proposes to require California museums to answer those questions. It would mandate a process of genealogical and historical research to identify potential descendants of covered cultural properties creators. It would require museums to reach out to those descendants, consult with them, and pursue ethical resolution, including the possibility of restitution, shared stewardship, and descendant participation in how their ancestors' work is interpreted and displayed. It places genealogy, the same genealogical standard that made the MFA Boston restitution possible, at the center of institutional responsibility, not as a courtesy, as a legal requirement. The MFA Boston showed us what is possible when an institution chooses to engage. This bill is about what happens when the law requires it. Next slide. So what remains? Oh, we have the provenance gap, yes. What remains? Approximately 40 to 45 of Dave's inscribed jars are known to survive. They sit in climate-controlled galleries across the United States. The Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, returned 2. Others remain. One of the most significant, the jar inscribed catenation on April 12th, 1836, which, by the way, April 12th is tomorrow. So we are in the energy of the pot speaking again to the world. The second of Dave's 2 great philosophical inscriptions is held by the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco. What I can say with certainty is this: the family has done everything right. They identified themselves, they submitted the genealogical evidence, they came forward with documentation, with patience, and with a request that no institution in good conscience should find difficult to honor, simply the willingness to sit down and engage. Dave pressed his name into clay so that his family could find him across the centuries. They found him. They are here. And the work of this forum, the work of expanding the human rights of people of African descent, includes ensuring that institutions hear them. Next slide. This session asks how we expand the human rights of people of African descent under the second international decade. One answer is this: we follow the evidence. We invest in the genealogical infrastructure that makes claims legible. We build the legal frameworks that require institutions to engage rather than to opt in when it is convenient. We center the descendants at every stage, and we refuse to let silence be the final answer to a question someone pressed into clay 200 years ago and sent forward through fire. The jars traveled because Dave could not. He was enslaved. He could not move freely, could not follow his own work, could not place it in his family's hands, but the jars could move, and they did. They traveled on wagons and rivers and trade networks, and eventually on exhibition tours that reached the cities where his descendants had settled after the Great Migration. The jars that carried the question, "I wonder where is all my relation," traveled east. And in the east, they found the answer. His family was there. His family has always been there. The concatenation he named in 1834 and pressed again into clay in 1836 had completed the work. Next slide. I would like to introduce Yaba. Yaba Baker is a direct descendant of David Drake and the living answer to everything his ancestor inscribed into clay, committed to fire, and sent forward through 200 years of American history. And the reason I mentioned that jar in San Francisco, because the date inscribed on it is April 12th, 1836. That is also the date that his grandson, Pierce Jones, who was the last remaining of the descendants to stay in Aiken, that is the very day that he was buried in a cemetery in Aiken County on April 12th. So the chain, the links, they are solid. And now I'm going to turn it over to Yaba, or for Chris to introduce Yaba. And thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Fascinating, Kelly. You just feel me so much. I have so much to say, but I gotta introduce Brother Yaba. So let me introduce Brother Yaba. You are absolutely on point. Let me do my job and introduce Brother Yaba. You feel me, so I have so much. And family, get your questions ready, get your comments, get your thoughts ready. We're going to bring up Brother Yaba, and then we're going to get to your questions, comments, and thoughts. And I'm going to jump in and talk about some bills and some policies and some laws, et cetera, some action. But Sister Kelly, thank you. I'm always filled to the top overflow, and this is no exception. Let me pick up where you left off and just say that I'm very honored. I had the opportunity to meet the Brother Yaba a few days ago for the first time, but I kind of feel like you know how sometimes you get an energy around people like you already knew them for a while, and so let me just say it straight though. But our good Brother Yaba is a direct descendant of David Drake, as mentioned, also known as Dave the Potter. So a living direct descendant of one of the ancestors is here today to speak with us, and this is a surprise. If you saw the flyer that came out for this panel, Brother Yaba was not on the flyer. This is a surprise visit and a surprise appearance and a special appearance by the living descendant of the man whom the legislation Kelly wrote and it has been talking about is about. So Brother Yaba, as I mentioned, is a direct descendant of David Drake, or better, and also known as Dave the Potter, whose work, as Kelly mentioned, has become globally recognized as a powerful symbol for artistry, history, resilience, legacy, and all other things. Brother Yaba Baker is an author, an entrepreneur. He's a cultural preservationist, and through his work, including his platform, Just Like Me, he's helped bring stories of Black history and identity to families and young people across the country and across the world, to be quite honest. Yaba has also played a direct role in reclaiming and preserving his own family's legacy, including efforts to recover and steward pieces created by Dave the Potter, David Drake, his ancestor. Today, he's going to share more about what it means for him to carry that legacy, not just as history, but lived experience, real world lived experience. Brother Yaba, thank you for being here. I'm happy to turn it over to you. I'm going to bring your slides up, brother.
I really appreciate that, Chris. First and foremost, God, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Kelly, that was amazing. From slide one to the end, you did your thing. And also, my family owes you a debt as well, because you were the genealogist who put that last piece in place for us to get the deal done with Boston. So we owe you a debt of gratitude. I can't believe you were ever nervous about that presentation. That was you knocked that out of the park. So now I feel like I gotta step up my game. I was like, wow, I gotta follow that. Okay, let's try to do this. Okay, so this is my background here. I started writing children's books back in 1996. The main reason was I didn't realize Dave was my ancestor, but I always felt a need to celebrate our ancestors and teach our children about what we've done and who we are, because it's so important to move to the next level. And before I get into that part, I do want to thank some of my family members who are on this call. Priscilla Williams is on the call. She's a direct descendant. My cousin Fortune Carolina is on the call. He's a direct descendant. Letitia Carolina is on the call. She's a direct descendant. If I miss anybody, I apologize, because you might see my face, but in reality, it's a team. My family has been amazing through this. And I'll get into how we all came together to do this in a minute. But I definitely want to acknowledge them before I went any further. And if you guys want to put something in the chat, my cousins, y'all can do that. And at the end, you guys want to jump in and add anything I miss, feel free to do so. But let's go right to the slides and look at a couple of things I want to look at in those slides. So important piece of what we're doing is reclaiming our legacy. But I like to go back a little bit and talk about the UN situation, right? So let's put the UN slide, which is the very next slide. The UN just said that chattel slavery in America was the gravest crime against humanity. And so that's a really big thing to say. And there are a lot of different talks about it. So if you don't know, the dissenting people, I believe, was United States, Argentina, and with somebody else I'm missing who dissented. So I'm a big believer in facts versus feelings. So let's go with chattel slavery and what it was. And I got these check marks here. So in chattel slavery, did they murder Africans throughout this process? That's a check, right? So you hit the button, Chris, that'd be a check mark that comes up. Enslavement, check, that's obvious, right? Deportation, unforceable transfer of population, literally the transatlantic slave trade was literally that, check. Severe deprivation of physical liberty, imprisonment, check. Torture, check. So the last one down there is persecution against a group based on political, racial, ethnic, or cultural, check. And enforced disappearance of persons, check. The reason why I brought this up is because if you read the international law, it said one of these things is considered a crime against humanity. America checked all the boxes. So that's why it's the gravest crime against humanity, because literally it checked every box against the crime against humanity. So now I break it down to a day level, right? So a lot of times we talk about slavery, whether it be Harriet Tubman, Malcolm wasn't slave, but slavery, whether it be a lot of ancestors going through what they went through. We don't usually talk about it in reverence. So when I talk about Dave, I always want to bring it to realism about what he experienced on a daily basis, bring the human side to this conversation. So imagine, I want to put all this in Dave's shoes. Imagine being born into slavery. As a human being, you don't have a choice to go to visit your friend. You don't have a chance to have a lazy Saturday. You don't have a chance to, I took my family on vacation a couple weeks ago. There is no going vacation. There are no days off. There are no going to work late. There's no sleeping in. Your life is dictated completely by another person. You have no choice about the situation. And this is as an individual. Then you get to a point where he did get married. He had children. We all know that Black men were not able to protect their wives from being raped. Now, we don't know for sure if his wives were raped or not, but I'm willing to bet some things went on that he couldn't stop from happening and caused some serious pain for him. Then his family was so to another plantation. If anybody's married, significant other, could you imagine being in love with somebody and the next day they're gone? And you have no idea where they went. You have no idea if they're okay. You don't know if they're dead or alive. I am a father of 2 children. My son is 13, my daughter is 17. I'm checking on my daughter several times a day. She's on a college tour. She's went to a college tour today. We were checking on where she got there. Is she okay? She needs some money. She texted me, sent her some money. I could imagine as a father, not knowing my daughter was okay. If she needed my help or my guidance, or she needed me to, protect her from somebody, or she just wanted to talk. Same thing for my son. This was Dave's life every single day. Now, from that lens, this man created these pots that are now artwork because he did it with excellence. He wrote on one of his pots, the same pot where he said, "Where's all my relations?" He said, "Friendship to all." You know what kind of man you have to be to endure that kind of trauma and crimes against you as a person to still say friendship to all? Our ancestors, the ones who were enslaved, need much more respect than we give them. They endured so we could be free. So I'm honored to be a descendant of Dave, not because he created pots, but because he endured, because he stood as a man, even in a place where he tried to take his manhood from him. So when we're talking about reparations and returning pots and all those kinds of things, to me, that's a separate argument or separate discussion from just honoring those people's shoulders we stand on. And to get to the portion of why my family felt so pushed or driven to reclaim our legacy. So I'm gonna get into a little bit about my family, and I'm gonna give them their flowers, and so because without my family support, we wouldn't be here. And to give you guys a little background how all this happened. So my aunt got a phone call in 2016 out the blue, and she answered it, and the lady started talking about her family. Well, actually, go a little further than that. The lady actually contacted my cousin's Fortune Carolina's wife and started talking to her about our family history. And she said, "Well, I'm the wrong person to talk to. Talk to Aunt Daisy. She's the one who knows all this stuff." So they called my Aunt Daisy, and during that time period, DC had a lot of scams going on for elderly people. And my uncle was in the background telling me, "Hang up, it's a scam, it's a scam." So the lady actually begged her not to hang up because she had been looking for us for a long time. We had no idea who Dave was. And she started telling us all these different things about him and who he was. And they were having an event for him in 30 days. They were calling it Dave's Day. Dave's Day was a day they were inducting Dave the Potter into the South Carolina Hall of Fame. So we still don't quite get it, if I'm being honest. So about 30 of us go down there, and they treat us like we're royalty. They're like taking pictures of us, and "Oh, you're part of the family," and we thought it was a really nice day. We still didn't get, because we don't have any reference of how much his pots are worth or what's going on. We just think that he's being honored. So fast forward to, I think, believe 2022, and if my family members are in the chat, if I'm getting the dates wrong, just jump in and correct me. The Hear Me Now tour comes up, and the Hear Me Now tour comes, and the first stop is the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. Yes, that Met. And so we got invited there. The magnitude of that presentation began to show us the value of Dave to the art society. And we began to have discussions, because I've been in financial planning for 10 years. I understand assets. I understand what that means. And my thought process simply is, this is our descendant. I understand normally when an artist dies, they pass along that artwork to their family members. And then family members can decide to keep the artwork or sell it or whatever else they want to do with it. We never got that chance. That's wrong. That shouldn't be, because as these things accumulate, again, I use the word assets because that's what they are. The people who have these pots, they're going to take loans on them. They're going to sell them. Their children are going to go to college off of them. They're going to buy property with these pots, while our children are trying to apply for student loans. Something's wrong with that. So we began to come together. We have several lines of people in our family. So we decided to take a representative from each family and kind of create our own little senate. And we began to strategize and say, okay, how are we going to plan to get these pots back? Because we knew Donald Trump had just been elected, and not trying to be politics into this whole thing, but we understand that DI and all those types of things were happening, and the wave of George Floyd had stopped, and it started going the other direction. And so we knew we had to be strategic in our thought process. So in our meetings, we're asking, well, who's the best lawyer to represent us? And we kept trying to throw around names, and George Farrish came up because he had defended well with the Bruce Beach case, which he got that land back for that family. So my cousin Letitia Carolina is on the call, and she had a cousin. Well, actually, Fortune and Letitia had a cousin who had a connection to George Farrish, and through her, and God rest in RIP to her, rest in peace to their cousin, because she passed away. But she got that connection to George Farrish, and George Farrish came on to our case, and we kind of went from there. It was a very interesting process because initially discussions with Boston were taking a really long time. Then Pierre took over as CEO of the Boston Museum in July of last year. And from July to October, we had the pots back. So I give so much credit to that Boston team. When we got there, I mean, everybody was in lock and step, and we kept hearing, this is the greatest thing we've ever done, is to do this for your family. We are so honored to do this. So we appreciate that from them. We will always be grateful for them for that. But I also want us to remember that this is only the first step. And my phrase is, don't treat us any different. Because a lot of times when Black people are asking for equality or equity, we're being treated as if we're asking for a favor. We're not asking for a favor. We have built this country with literally our blood and our bodies over centuries. And the nerve of somebody to tell us that we are asking for a handout is ridiculous. And we are willing to work museums and work with collectors because we understand this is a new dynamic. But don't be mistaken with the thought process of we're going to go away because you don't want to talk to us. That's not going to happen. And we're going to move forward as a family. We're going to continue to represent ancestors well. We want any and all help we accept. And I'm just thankful for all the people who supported us, whether you send a text or send a letter or even just quietly pray for us. We really appreciate all that support. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say today. Was I wanted to make Deep's life a reality for people of his experience, and also tell the story of how we got here and where we're planning to go with this. Because we have about 38 more pots to get, and we will get them. Thank you very much.
Brother Yaba, brother, if I could, and then to the family that's here, the Baker family that's here, I want to thank you all for being. By the way, family, we're gonna take questions and comments for Yaba, for Kelly and the family in a few minutes here. Brother Damon, yes, there will be a recording provided. We're gonna live premiere this, by the way, on YouTube as well. So this is also going to be broadcast out on YouTube as well, family. So look out for that over the next 24, 48 hours or so. But let me just, man, I'm thankful. I'm just thankful first. I'm thankful to God. I'm thankful for the ancestors. that connected us. Sister Kelly, you said it. April 12th. That's tomorrow. April 12th, 1836. That's that. So we are one day. Within 24 hours. Of I mean, and that's not an accident, right? That's not a coincidence. So I gotta get back to my host job and my facilitator job. Let me get back to it, family. But I got so much. I got two questions I want to actually start. Oh, there we go. Shout out to ETM Media family. ETM Media is already ahead of me. Shout out to ETM Media right now. I believe ETM is live streaming right now. That they 2 days ahead of me. Thank you, family. Shout out to you, Moya and Kim over there, the whole ETM Media family, the number one grassroots reparations YouTube channel in the state, if you ask me, and that's true. So, thank you, sister. Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. Okay, family. Questions, comments, thoughts for Brother Yaba, Sister Kelly. If you want to come off mute, don't do that yet. We want you to raise your hand. So use the hand raise button if you have a question or comment or thought to add or so. If you don't want to do that, you can pop your question in the chat, and we'll get to your question in the chat too. I got two questions. I got one for Kelly and one for Brother Yaba to kick us off here. Sister Kelly, I want to start with you if you don't mind. You mentioned the genealogical proof standards in your presentation. I love that. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what those genealogical proof standards are? I believe there's 5 or so overarching genealogical proof standards. Can you talk about what those are a little bit more?
So, and forgive me for being on mute, but I have to save some battery or off camera because I have to save some battery. I've been glitching a little bit, but the GPS standard basically states that you have to match each record in the chain of lineage. So you have to do exhaustive research. That means that you're going to look at census records. You're going to look at estate files and probate records and deeds of sale. You're going to look at World War II draft cards, for example, to trace the family's place during the 1940s. You're going to go back and look at death certificates, birth certificates, and those certificates and that genealogical proof is going to link each chain. So the way that we started with Yaba's mother, and we took her information and we took that back to his grandmother. And so we were able to show that she had a death certificate that her mother named the parents on that death certificate. So that linked that chain. And then that went down to the great-grandfather, and we were able to find a death certificate that named his father. And then we were able to go back to the second great-grandfather, which is Pierce Jones, who I described. And we found where he named in his death certificate that his parents were Mark Jones and a woman named Carolyn Miles. Carolyn Miles is the person that all genealogists and historians refer to as Dave's daughter. And so that genealogical proof standard that links each chain together is what the GPS standard requires.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. And I want to ask that question because as we are on our own journey here in California toward statewide standards and really genealogy for 2 million or so of us here in California is what we're looking towards with some of the legislation that we're working on. Also, thank you for sharing and shedding light on the genealogical proof standards. For those who don't know about those, please do learn more about them. Holla at Kelly, check it out online because that's very, very important to anybody doing any kind of work in the legislation, outside legislation for genealogy and for lineage. Brother Yab, I got a question for you. Then we're going to go to our brother Jesse, who has a question also. Then we got some questions in the chat as well. Brother Yab, if I could, and I'm just going to call it audible here. I get to use this privilege, I guess, as the facilitator. So for Brother Yaba and also for others who are here from the Baker family, I want to put nobody on the spot, but if others here in the Baker family, other of the descendants of David Drake who are here want to speak on this too, the floor is yours also. I think one of the there's two big things that's coming out of this talk today for me. One is people hearing directly from the descendants of David Drake, and also hearing from Kelly about the genealogy work, and then what I'm gonna talk about in a few minutes, which is the bill and the fight to get an author for the bill to do what we want to do for the Drake family. But let me just ask you, Brother Yaba and Drake family, feel free to jump on in here too. What do you want to happen? What is restoring of the legacy to you? A lot of times in this work, like I got ideas, we got ideas, or they should get this, that, the third, this, the third. But what is restoration, reparations, recognition for your ancestor and your family to you?
I'll answer it this way. So we believe the pots at our museum should be returned to us. Now, that return can look different ways, right? Like we did with Boston, they bought one back from us. We have another museum we're talking to that they might return to a payment plan, right? We understand this is a moving target, so we're not coming with a zero game mindset, but we will not be okay with somebody refusing to talk to us or refusing to engage with us, because that to me is disrespectful, considering that we had one person in the article say, well, how do we know they're the descendants of Dave? And that to me was insulting. And I was like, we went through probably more verification than most people in this American white descent go through to prove themselves. And that seems to be a recurring thing for us, no matter where we are. If we are a pilot, we got to prove that we passed the pilot test, or we did it, or if we're in some position, we got to prove that we did this. The days of trying to prove pass a regular standard, those days are over. We're proven we are who we are, do what's right, because the other side of this, Chris, is museums, as much as they want to be seen as progressive and moving forward, this particular thing will tell you how progressive, how much they actually believe in their own documentation. They believe in not having broken chains of leadership, ownership. Well, this is a broken chain of ownership. So if that's in your bylaws and you aren't willing to talk to us, then you're not adhering to your own bylaws. So how am I supposed to perceive that? How is our family supposed to perceive it? So to kind of bring it all together, we want at least to begin negotiations and talks with every museum that has a plot. That's very minimum.
Okay, thank you, Brother Yaba, and to the Baker family. If there's anything you want to add, feel free. Also, you can put your hand up, or hop off mute. That's totally fine too. If you want to put in the chat, that's totally awesome and fine as well. I know we got a question from our good brother Jesse here. I want to get to Brother Jesse. Jesse, are you in Paris, brother?
Yeah, no, I'm in Denver.
Okay, all right.
little different.
What's your question, brother? And thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah, thank you for hosting this. Thank you for putting this on. My question is, we're doing something similar in Colorado. We're doing a racial equity study, and we currently are doing a genealogy here in Colorado. So I just wanted to get some tips on what we should look out for here in Colorado in regards to what y'all doing in California. And then my question for Abba was, how did you go about finding all the items that were stolen from your ancestor? Like, did you have to go to multiple museums? Did you have to go to multiple sources to find all the items? The first question is for Kelly, and then the second question is for Abu.
Kelly, want to jump in on one of both of those?
Yes.
So you asked about what to look out for when you're doing genealogy in Colorado?
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing, when you start someone's genealogical profile, you want to look for the oldest living aunts or the oldest living family member. The right now, the census has the 1950 census available, and the census records are released every 72 years. So in 2022, they released the 1950 census. In 2012, they released the 1940 census. And now going forward in 2032, that's when you'll be able to see the data for the 1960 census. So right now, if you have someone who was born before April 1st or after April 1st, 1950, excuse me, before April 1st, 1950, that is who you'll be able to find in the census. And then from there, you're going to take those records back. You're going to need a tool. I suggest familysearch.org, or if you can afford it, you can go with ancestry.com, which is very user friendly. But what you want to do is track conditions. So instead of looking at the proof that says this person is chattel enslaved or was or descended from that system, you want to look at actually what happened, and you want to look at the counties. So when you look at the counties, that's when you see all of the circumstances that our ancestors went through in Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and that's where you're going to find whatever was lost. It's in those records where all of that comes up, deed records. So just make sure that you are looking at all records, and that when you get to the 1870 census, you jump off of that and you start looking at the surnames of white families in the area, especially then. That was important for Dave Drake because he was initially enslaved by a man named Harvey Drake. And so it was important to know that that name tied to that particular enslaver, because that's how we were able to see his mortgage deed in 1818, and we were able to follow who Dave was sold to in 1847. He eventually was sold from Harvey to Abner Landrum, and then from Abner Landrum he went to Dr. Landrum, who eventually sold him away from his family. His family, his first set of family went to Louisiana, and that's who he was wondering about. Where did they go? But following the enslavers is how we were able to see different generations of Dave's life. And then there he was in the 1870 census as head of household with all of his children and grandchildren listed. So that Pierce Jones that I'm talking about, that is the third great grandfather of Yaba. He lived with Dave and was recorded living with Dave, which is why it's so difficult to say this family was not descended from Dave. But you have to go to those records. You have to go inside of the enslavers' records. Do they exist? Absolutely, they exist. America's the best record keeper ever. Try not to file your taxes one year and see what happens. Try not to register for the draft and see how fast they come and get you. They know how to find you, and you are recorded.
I guess I'm gonna answer Jesse's second question. Whether we as a family start doing a lot of research. My mom and my aunt were really the main ones doing a lot of research. So we had a good idea of, I would probably say about maybe after we decided to move forward, we had a good idea of about 20, 25 museums. And then George Farrish hired an assistant to do an extensive search, so we know what every museum. So now we know what every museum has a pot. And then of course, I know we had when the article came out, we had a couple people send us pictures of pots in places. I sent one of your pots in this museum over here in Montana. Do you have this on the list? So I thank my Black folk out here and my white brothers and sisters who are out here supporting us, send us pictures and send us information, essentially being a hotline for us about where these pots are. We appreciate you.
Thank you, brother Jesse. And great question. I'm going to go to Sister Raphael who has a question also, and then I got a question in the chat for my sister Malika as well. I want to do some special shout out. We got some special guests in the chat too. First, again, shout out to ETM Media, the Amend the Match Media family. We're live streaming on YouTube right now, so shout out to the ETM Media family. Go check us out on YouTube. Go check the family out on YouTube as well. Get the YouTube link, push the YouTube link out. Share this with as many people as possible. We're shouting out the ETM Media family once again. Also, I want to shout out someone who didn't know they were going to get shouted out, but they're going to get shouted out anyway. Our sister Jasmine Phillips. Jasmine, who is a creative artist in and out of the LA area, if I'm not mistaken, who is doing some amazing work around reparations and restitution in the art space as well currently now. Jasmine, I ain't gonna put you on the spot, Jasmine, but if you want to come on and talk about the work you're doing, you're more than welcome to do that as well. I'll give you 30 seconds or so if you want to just let folks know what you got going on. No pressure at all. But I did just want to highlight you and thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for helping to if you're an artist, if you're a creator right now, you should care about this. Because you create art, you creating property right now. You want the value and the legacy and the recognition of that right now and for your future generations also. So you should care about this, and to everybody who knows any artists, knows any creators, no matter what your form is, this is about you too. This is about us. So I want to give Jasmine a shout out too, as well. Let me take the quick question in the chat from my sister Malika here. The question was more of a comment than a question as mentioned, but I want to pick this up because you mentioned in your comment, sister, that quote, there is a federal and state, especially New York, legislation in place for the Jewish community. That I believe you're talking about something similar to the legislation that we're talking about here. I want to highlight this because I think our sister Kelly may have mentioned that last year, very recently, there was a bill here in California. I believe it was AB 2186, and that bill was about property, cultural property, art property, made under what was called political duress during the Holocaust. And California passed a law last year, effectively saying if you have property, art, cultural property made during the Holocaust, among other things, the descendants of the creators of that property do have a right and a right to seek compensation for it. That's one of the things that legislation did. So there is related legislation here in California to what we're talking about today. I'm going to show you all in a minute the legislative version of the bill and the law that Kelly just talked about. We're looking for an author for this bill and for this law, and I want to shout out all of the legislative directors, for the staff, and for the assembly members and the senators who are in the building right now too. Right? This is to you, right, and for you as well. We want an author for the bill and for the law that Kelly has been talking about, and for the work that Kelly and the family of David Drake have been doing. So, but I wanted to just get to your question, Sister Malika, that there is some related legislation for the Jewish community, not just in New York, but here in California too. Also, mentioned in New York, I want to give a big shout out to another special guest, our good brother Divine Prince, who is the president of the U.S. Freedmen Project out of New York. Shout out to New York. Y'all know I come from New York. So shout out to brother Divine Prince. Appreciate you, brother. Shout out to the whole U.S. Freedmen Project for being here as well. If I missed you in the special shout outs, I get to you shortly and soon. But before I do that, Sister Raphael, it's on you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so grateful to be a part of this space. And as always, thank you to CJAC for empowering us. So I hope that my questions are not redundant. I have two, and it's for either of your esteemed panelists there. And I thank both of them for their time in participating today. So I've just returned from a trip to Mississippi, my mother's birthplace, and spent some time with my great aunt. She is our oldest living relative. And at urging of some of the genealogists that I have been working with through like the LA County Library System, they recommended that we get her ancestry test done. She was a little reluctant, but she agreed to it. So we're just waiting for the results to come back from her saliva with ancestry. And they contend that the oldest person in the family will be able to allow you to go back even further. So I'm on that step. While I dealt with praise from some of the groups I work with, I also dealt with some scorn because they spoke down to me as a hobbyist. And I wonder when we talk about the legal acknowledgement versus a hobbyist, will we come up with those issues? And I'm hoping that some of the legislation that you're putting forward will help empower us and deal with that. But also because we're such a small population, it may turn out that some of us have these familial revelations like Yaba and his family did. And then a group of those people will make some moves forward. What will happen when someone else that's very late to get their genealogy tested comes back and says, I'm a member of this group as well, and they try to claw back or participate in whatever has happened there? So how do we have like clawback addressing and protections versus what's legitimate or illegitimate? There will be some nefarious players that step in to try to gum up the works on everything that we do. So that's really two questions there for me. Professional versus a hobbyist, how do you address that? And then future protections for people that do have these identifiers. Thank you.
Brilliant questions, right for you, Dr. Kelly. Yep, jump on in. Yep, go ahead. Do your thing.
So so first of all, there is a thin line between a hobbyist and a professional genealogist, and it's ours. Malcolm Gladwell had a book where he talked about what makes someone excellent at something. It's called The Tipping Point. It's a New York Times bestseller. And he said that about 10,000 hours dedicated to one task usually will make you an expert in that task, whether you want to be an expert in it or not. So you really have to be careful on what you spend 10,000 hours doing. But to that end, being a professional genealogist is one of those trades that's within all of our wheelhouses. And it's something that I believe African-American women should take up. And definitely become very, very good at it. But to talk about in terms of how we're using this genealogy and how you can make discoveries of your own family, that's what Bruce's Beach was. So the Bruce family, that land was taken from them in the 1920s. And so it was up to the current descendants to know that this is something that devastated our family, and we are still feeling the effects of not having that land. And by knowing that history, that is something they were able to reclaim. There is treasure in all of our ancestry because we have been systemically denied access to services that we are now being allowed to take on. For example, if your ancestor was a rejected Dawes Roll citizen, if they were rejected from the Dawes Rolls, from the Cherokee Rolls, or from the Muskogee Creek Rolls, well, in 2017, they're now letting the descendants of Cherokee freedmen enter into that tribe. In 2025, in July, the Creek Indians did the same thing. So if you were to go back into your genealogy and find that you have a descendant that was excommunicated from that rolls, you can join that tribe now by doing a little elbow work and finding those records. And that's another project that I'm currently working on, is taking those rejected Dawes Rolls freedmen cards and bringing them up to the present day. So there's treasure in all of our families, and the Baker family is a wonderful example of that. These pots were utilitarian pots. Everyone had one. If you didn't have a pot, you couldn't store your meat. You couldn't preserve your food. So the fact that something that was as simple as a utility becoming great art, that just speaks to the brilliance of our ancestors. And our ancestors were quite amazing. Our 1800, 1834, 1850 ancestors, they were incredible. That's why we're incredible. So you have all of that in your genealogy. You just have to look.
Fire.
Quick point of correction: the Baker family is on my dad's side, so it's more of a Williams. But I don't want to get
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
No. It's so many people in my family at this point. Names go around, and like we refer to the Drake family, and then we're not named Drake, so it's all good. We're fine.
You gonna get Yaba trouble at the cookout. The
Pretty much. That's it.
Love, no, great work, family. Thank you. I got some other questions in the chat here. I want to get to them. I want to do a quick shout out to our international guests also. For our international guests, if you're from outside of the states and you here right now. We would love any questions, comments, thoughts you have as well. So the space is open as well too. Feel free to drop in the chat if you want to, put your hand up. You have thoughts, comments, questions. We just want to make space for our international guests also. So thank you. We have Kelly, we have some folks in the chat asking that you list all the main steps for tracing genealogy in the chat because they couldn't take notes fast enough.
I'm in the process of doing that. Yes.
All right. So and we're going to help out too, family. So after we're done with the broadcast today, we are excited to stay connected with you because you're all being called to action as well as a part of this, this work today too. Y'all know how we do at the CJEC work, right? We do things and we take action in the real world. And so you're all part of that. And thank you. One of the first steps here is to get the knowledge, get the education, get the empowerment that is going to help make that action successful. So again, that's what folks are asking in the chat. And there's a question about which records are the most valuable to locate was the sort of specific question that came up as well.
Records, birth, death, marriage certificates, anything that shows a documented chain of title. The census records are secondary because they are kind of word of mouth. But yes, so the vital records are the most important.
Totally muted. Do a quick time check here. We're doing really good on time. What I want to do now is pick up where Kelly and Brother Yaba started really, and that is specifically to show you and tell you and talk to you about the effort to help and to make change for families like the Drake family and others too across the state of California. I want to share my screen and show you the legislation itself. So Dr. Farrish talked about the bill, and I'm going to bring this up. I want you to see that and hear that as well. And then any questions, comments, thoughts you have about this, happy to hear them too. So take a look at this, family. All right, and we're gonna do this workshop as we do here on the CJEC side. So what you're looking at right now is the actual legislative text, the bill form of the act that Kelly talked about in bill form, the Antebellum African American Cultural Property Ethical Providence Act. Take a look at it. Okay, we're not gonna go through every word by word, but I want you to just look at what you see on the screen. This is the bill form of the effort to provide and create redress for families like the Drake family. Everything Kelly said in her presentation is in the legislation with respect to what the legislation is actually supposed to be and is doing. So this is legislation that we are advancing this year, and that, as I mentioned before, we want an author for this year as soon as possible. And we are looking for folks in the state Senate, folks in the state assembly, folks in the governor's office to look at this, and then to, at least for folks in the state Senate and the state assembly, to author this legislation, put their name on as the author of this legislation. So Kelly talked broadly about what the bill does. I think I don't want to go too far past that. I think that was a great sort of overview of what the bill does. But I wanted you to see the legislation itself, see the text of it itself, because this is what we are asking, what we are calling on legislators in the state Senate and the Assembly to pick up as legislation this year. I'm going to show you some other, at least one other piece of legislation too that's related to this. But take a look at what you're seeing on the screen here. This is the bill that we want an author for. I want to highlight one particular part here. If I can highlight this, all right, let's see if I can do it that way. Right there, so you should see me highlighting this on the screen, and y'all know how we do, family. Okay, as a part of the work with CJEC, you know that no matter what, you want to get some political education no matter what. You cannot come to a CJEC thing and not leave more politically informed, to have more knowledge about politics. And let's just keep it real, civics, the actual government rule, bill, policy making process. So what you're looking at right now is, again, text of a bill here in California. I highlighted one particular part because I want to uplift this, not just for us here, but particularly for the Drake family. As you can see, that number 1 is highlighted, and it says the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, reached a widely reported restitution agreement restoring ownership of vessels created by David Drake, Dave the Potter, an enslaved South Carolina artist, to his descendants, illustrating that institutions can recognize ethically defective title and move to ethical restitution and shared public access. Okay, what does all that mean? Okay. So one, if I'm not mistaken, let me just say, I believe this is the first time we see David Drake's name in legislation. I could be wrong. But this, I believe, is the first time we see David Drake's name in legislation. I could be wrong. Brother Yaba, help me out. Sister Kelly,
I think you're right on that. I think you, and also the agreement we did with Boston was the first of its kind as well.
That's right. This has never happened before.
Never happened. So what we're looking at is historic. The first time the ancestor's name is in legislation. Now, by the way, this will be forever. This is on state record forever. It will never be people 200, 300, 400, 500 years from now, if they look at the state records of California, they will see David Drake's name. They will see the MFA Boston reference. They will hear, and at least they will read more about what this bill is doing for families like the Drake family. But I just wanted to lift up the historical nature of this. That's the first part. Second part is, don't pay too much attention again to all of the other parts of the text. There's a lot of words here, okay? But I wanted to just scroll down here and just talk about specifically what the bill is telling the state to do. Okay, I'm not going to go through like the specific details of everything, but I want to just make this as plain as possible and show folks this in the real world, in real time, right? So we're going through actual legislation in real time right now. Y'all know how we do, right? Actual legislation in real time. I'm going to highlight this part right here for us as well. You should be able to see it on my screen as well as being highlighted, right? This is one section to start with right there. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for us too, okay? So this is the first part of the bill where it says what this bill is telling the state and entities in the state to do. So, a museum that holds, controls, possesses, or owns covered cultural property, like the pots, the 38 pots that are still to be returned, on January 1st, 2027. So any museum that has anything like that, including that, shall complete what's called a descendant provenance review of all of the property that they have, no later than 24 months of the effective date of this act. So what does that mean? That means that within 24 months of the effective date of this act, so between January 1, 2027 and January 1, 2029, so within 2 years. So starting from January 1 to 2027 and January 1, 2029, museums across the state have no more than 2 years to, one, complete what's called a descendant provenance review, okay? And figure out if it knows or should know that the property that they have is and was created by someone who was enslaved, someone who is and was like David Drake. I'm going to keep reading. A museum shall complete a descendant provenance review before accessioning any property if it knows or should know that the property is or is a culturally covered property. And then the bill goes on to talk more about what it means and what those sort of circumstances are. I want to skip down a little bit. So at minimum, this provenance review must include a good faith effort to identify the creator, a documented research plan that applies genealogical methods and proof standards, kind of what we talked about earlier. And among other things as well, more investigation and research into whether or not and who the owners of the property are. I don't want to go into all of the details right now, but the museums must complete an internal review of what property they have and whether or not that property was owned and or created by folks like David Drake. Okay? And among other things, after this provenance review is completed, that museum is required to then enter into dialogue and negotiations with the family and the descendants of that property to come to an agreement about what restitution and property looks like, what restitution for that property looks like to that individual family. And as I mentioned earlier, because of the bill and the law that was signed last year, and excuse me, it was AB 2867, if I'm not mistaken, AB 2867, the bill I mentioned before, that was about the Holocaust art. Because of that bill last year, families like the Drake family already have a legal right and cause of action to petition for compensation for any property that was not returned. And so that legal right of action already exists to get compensation if that is what the family seeks. Long story, not as long. What we're calling for today is for members of the state legislature, one of the 80 assembly members, one of the 40 senators, and or somebody in the governor's office to tell one of those 80 and one of those 40 to pick this legislation up and author and introduce and then champion and ultimately pass this legislation and bring restoration and restitution to families like the Drake family. That's what we're calling for today. You can help us do that. And I'm going to talk about a couple of ways that you can help us do that. And you'll get more about that once we send out the follow-up after we're done here today, which I'm really, really excited about. But I want us to see the bill and see the legislation itself, because this is what we're asking folks to come on and sign on to. There is a number of different legislators who we think would be great to pick this bill up. But right now, we want folks to know about it and then, pick it up, really. So I want to stop sharing my screen here for a second because I want to say a couple other words. I'm going to bring up another piece of legislation as well. We're also taking questions, comments, thoughts in the chat as well, family, about the legislation that we are calling for an author for today. I want to bring up one other piece of legislation for us to look at as well, and that is none other than some folks who have been working with us for a while have seen this multiple times and know exactly what we're talking about right now. But of course, I cannot leave here without also bringing up another bill that is absolutely related to what we're talking about today, and that is Assembly Bill 2723. AB 2723. That is a bill that we have authored here at CJEC, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, with Assemblymember David Tangipa. And that bill would create a state division called the California American Freedmen Affairs Division with a genealogy office inside of it. And that genealogy office would be and will be empowered to provide free genealogy to people in California who believe they are descendants of those who were enslaved in this country. So that's AB 2723. Right now, we're asking folks across the state of California to, one, come on and support the bill. You can sign a petition to support the bill right now. You can also reach out to the California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, and encourage her to support the bill as well for a number of different reasons. And you can also encourage your state legislator, your state assembly member, your state senator to support the bill when the bill comes up for a hearing in committee as well. So there's two bills I wanted to highlight for you. This is AB 2723. This bill is authored right now by Assemblymember David Tangipa, and as I mentioned, it would establish a division of American Freedmen Affairs inside of the California Secretary of State's office with a genealogy office inside of it to provide free genealogy for descendants of people who were enslaved in this country. I was thinking about this a lot, Brother Yaba, when you were talking, and actually Sister Kelly as well, to the question of who do I descend from? Who do I descend from? Is there someone in my lineage, in my line, who I descend from? So that's what AB 2723 is built to help us find out. It's built to help all of us find out who we descend from and trace our lineage and our ancestry to the period of enslavement here in the state of California. So I don't want to go too much further into this, because I do want to give more time for an additional Q&A, and if there are other comments and thoughts from the audience. But I wanted to highlight two bills. One that we are looking for an author for, that's the Antebellum African American Ethical Providence Act, and of course the California American Freedmen Affairs Division Bill AB 2723. The two pieces of legislation that we're asking for support from you today, and from the legislature today, and of course after today also. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a moment here, which is right now, actually. But I want to get back to comments and questions from our team and staff and the folks in the audience. I see some other questions in the chat, Sister Raphael. That will be amazing. So yes, it would be great if you wanted to reach out and thank some member Tangipa for authoring 2723, and if you want to encourage him to pick up Kelly's bill as well, that will be great too. We are also encouraging Assemblymember Tangipa and seeking him, looking to him as an author as well. But feel free to reach out to him and thank him for authoring 2723. I think that's good too. Okay, I want to open up space again for questions, comments, thoughts for folks from the audience, for folks here watching in the chat, for our international audience as well. We would love questions, comments, thoughts if you have any. If not, it's totally fine too. From our domestic family, our U.S. family, I want to make space for folks who have questions, comments, thoughts as well. If there are any comments anyone wants to make, we're happy to take them now. And soon after that, we will wrap us up and get us back to our days. And again, no matter where you are, whatever time zone you are, thank you for joining us at least here in California this afternoon, because it's afternoon right now, morning/afternoon. Okay. All right, Brother Jesse, I'm gonna come back to you in 1 second, brother. Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna quickly run through the questions in the chat. I think we got to the most valuable records question from our sister Tracy. So thank you very much. I'm going to some comments in the chat from our sister Malika. Yes, I completely agree with that comment, sister Malika. There are a bunch of property that's been returned to many families, especially during the Holocaust. Right, there's a whole effort and movement that still continues to this day to seek out and find and return property to those who had it taken from them during the Holocaust. Our effort is equally as important, of course, and that's partly why we were talking earlier about the bill AB 2867 last year that does apply to families like the Drake family also. So families like the Drake family can also make use of what's in AB 2867 as well. Scrolling back through the chat, thank you much for all the comments. Dr. Farrish, thank you for dropping in the information there as well. All right, Brother Jesse, I'm coming back to you, sir. What's up?
Yes, sir. So my question was, what do you think is the best strategy for the Freeman Borough? Should we do it at the state level or the federal level or both?
Jesse, brother, it's a great question, brother. If you ask me, they should be everywhere. Okay. Everywhere. I could put them in the school board if you ask me. Okay, I mean that's how deep I want them. Like there should every part of the country that we built should speak specifically and have a specific place in a space for us. If you ask me, have a permanent, specific, exclusive place for us, right? So that's at the local list of the local levels, city, all right? I said school board, right? City, county. I want to give a shout out to our family in LA. The LA, I believe, City Council is going to hear and consider a proposal and a plan to create a City of LA Freedmen's Bureau. If I'm not mistaken, the LA family is going to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. That is under consideration, I believe, very soon. I want to say in the next, very soon this year. That follows the LA Charter Commission, I believe, approving something like that out of their own local commission. So that's a local effort to create a local American Freedmen Affairs Division. I support that 1,000% at the city level, at the county level. Of course, we're working for that at the state level, the federal level as well. And why don't we connect all of them at some point, right? By the way, I supported that out of the state of California too, wherever you are in your city, y'all in Colorado, the family, I know we got our New York family here too, wherever you are. I think there should be a permanent infrastructure space and a place for us specifically. I think we're owed it. I think we deserve it. I think we had something like it originally back in the toward the end of the Civil War or so. So I think it should be everywhere, and I think they all help each other too, because now I could talk about the LA Freedmen's Bureau going on, and I could take that to my city of Sacramento. You see LA doing a Freedmen's Bureau in Sacramento. I want one over here too. Then Sacramento got one, and then y'all could say, all right, well, the state is working on one too. Then Colorado's looking at it. New York is looking. That's how we've been moving as a movement. Y'all know that. That's how we've been moving as a movement since we started, right? We all build on each other's work. We are all connected in that way. So that is how I think the strategy should unfold, brother. Great question. Thank you as always. I want to kick the mic right now to our good brother Divine Prince, president of the U.S. Freedmen Project. Brother Divine, peace, blessings, brother.
Man, how are you? Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Man, I just wanted to thank you guys for an amazing presentation, for highlighting this issue, highlighting a foundational piece of what makes this reparations movement go, and this movement for accurate representation and policies around the country. So I just want to thank you guys for that. I would say my only comment, because I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that I think it was, I just want to get the name correct. I think it was Sister Malika. She talked about the HCPO in New York. That's the Holocaust Claims Processing Office. And so one of the key things as I was looking through that, as we were crafting legislation here in New York, what we found is, that genealogy is also a foundational tool that's used in that. And so it's not just something that pertains to us. And so it's not a foreign concept. It should be something that is easily understandable and understood, because everyone uses that tool. And so we use that as a precedent setting office to advocate what we're looking to do for the freedmen here in New York as well, because that's an office. What's interesting about that office, though, is that it is 100% free to anyone that makes a claim. And it does not stop at just those that are descendants of the Holocaust in Germany that are also residents of New York. Anyone from anywhere around the world can file a claim on the New York taxpayer's dime in that office with no charge. And so, these are things that, are made available to other groups. And, we are not going to stop until that is made available to our group as well, because it's what we have earned and what we deserve and what we demand for any support politically at this time.
Brother Devon, thank you, brother. Great comment. I don't want you to leave here, brother. Stay right there. I got a quick question for you about what you just said, brother. But also want to give a quick shout out to our brother Bahi in the chat. Brother Bahi, I believe brother Bahi is in Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken. New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. Been rocking and doing work in this space for years. You see, we across the country and we worldwide. So thank you, brother Bahi. Appreciate you, brother. Always good to be in your presence, brother. Devon, so just real quick, brother, from your perspective and from your role as a leader of the U.S. Freedmen Project here, and shout out to the whole U.S. Freedmen Project team and family who's here too, by the way. So one, did you say that that in New York, somebody who is a descendant or somebody who is impacted by the Holocaust anywhere in the world can file a claim for some kind of services of some kind in New York? Is that what you said, brother?
So what I said was that there is a service or office in New York that's a part of the New York state budget that uses New York tax dollars, and any descendant or any persons that were affected or descendant of someone affected by the Holocaust can file a claim through this office. But anyone, anywhere in the world can come to New York, whether they live here or not, ever been here or not, and file a claim through that office as well, free of charge.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. That's knowledge for me, brother. And I don't want to ask you for 30 more seconds of your time, brother. I know we're in this, in the Fifth Permanent Forum. I know I saw I think your team put out a letter to the UN, if I'm not mistaken, right after the UN made the declaration about the crime against humanity, and slavery being the greatest crime against humanity. Can you tell me where they can find that letter, and give us sort of a brief overview of what that letter is about?
Okay. So I don't want to, okay, I can do that. Definitely. This is what you asked for. So I will definitely do that. And I'm only hesitating a bit because I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but we must continue to speak truth to power wherever we find ourselves. So thank you for the invitation to do so. That resolution and that public statement, that press release can be found on the official X page of the U.S. Freedmen Project. So that is at U.S. Freedmen PRJ. Again, that is at U.S. Freedmen PRJ. And so it was something that was mailed out to various media groups here in New York and across the country. We also have plans to take that resolution, our public statement, and our response to the resolution directly to the Ghanaian embassy here in New York as well. So look for that. And we also got a number of organizations that agreed with our sentiment to sign on with us, CJEC being one of them, and other organizations around the country. And I highlight that because I think it's apropos to what we're talking about here, because what we're finding is that this nationwide movement for lineage-based repair, based on the status that our ancestors was given and earned at the end of the Civil War, and then codified nationally through the 13th Amendment the 13th Amendment in 1865, is that this movement is a movement of concatenation, right? It is a chain of events and people linked together by a common cause, by a common harm done to our lineage, done to our people group here, done to our class of people. And that class of people are the American freedmen. And so with that as the backdrop, the reason why our response to the resolution was what it was is not because we disagree that the transatlantic slave trade was one of, if not the gravest crime against humanity, but because we understand that, again, that concatenation matters. We have to identify where that concatenation begins when we're talking about a justice claim. And so the resolution itself, though on its face is a good thing, starts that chain on the continent of Africa. Now, again, on its face, that sounds like a great idea until you understand that the concatenation of slavery also begins on that continent, and with the number of those foundational tribes that then became Ghana, that then introduced the resolution. And so if we're talking about true justice and repair, those that participated in the slave trade cannot then bring up the case for reparations for that slave trade. And so, since I've started this fight, we've vowed as an organization to continually speak truth to power. And for a long time, that was a very comfortable position to be in, because the face that we spoke that truth to power was often pale or lacking melanin. So it was a clear and present danger, a well-defined enemy. What we found as we've done more research and we've walked and analyzed that chain that makes up the Con-Cancer Nation we're talking about today, we found that there are many tribes on the continent of Africa that are also complicit, that partnered with the European enslavers. And so our public statement as the U.S. Freedmen Project is that the American freedmen and the American freedmen alone will speak for the American freedmen. And that is something that the UN and the international body should easily understand, because one of the pillars of reparations based on international law is satisfaction. And I can hear the songwriter in my mind saying, do it, do it. Do it till you're satisfied. But here's the bigger point of satisfaction. The harmed group tells you when they're satisfied, not those that caused and created the harm telling you what satisfaction looks like. And I'll land there.
You done landed, brother. You done landed. That's a landing. That's a hell of a landing. Thank you, brother. I wanted to hear what your thoughts are, because I did see the statement and I wanted to, and CJ is a signatory on it too proudly, and I wanted to lift it up, because we family here, and we got to talk truth. And y'all know how we do. We are honest about who we are and what we want, and that comes with no fear. And to win restitution, to win reparations, to win restoration, for families like the Drake family, for families like those, for American freedmen families across the state, and really, across the country. Truth has to be at the center of it, and sometimes that's hard. But the only way we get through it is to get through it and to go through it together. So I appreciate that. Family, we are rounding up and wrapping up here. I want to circle back here and turn it back to Kelly and to Yaba here for any final words, final thoughts you have about today. Anything you want to add and share? I'm thankful and I'm filled for the conversation today. But any final words, final thoughts? Brother Yaba, maybe I'll start with you, and then we can kick it to Sister Kelly.
Just appreciative of the kind of work that you are doing at CJAC and others are doing the same. It's gonna be a long journey. We know, but we're built for this, right? Our ancestors have laid the groundwork for us. It's one of the reasons why I went over what Dave's life must have been like, because we have no excuses, right? If he can get through that and create a kind of excellence that lasted over 175 years, what do we have to say at that point? We have to step into our place and make sure that we are laying the groundwork for the next generation and generation into that. Because as you can see, they're trying to turn the clock back on us. It won't work. We'll continue to do the work. Everybody do their part. We're going to continue to move this thing forward. So I thank everybody for coming today. I appreciate your support. All prayers are appreciated, and you'll be seeing me again.
Yeah, wait, brother. Shout out to you and to the Baker family. Shout out to everybody that's watching on the YouTube live stream right now too, and everybody that's gonna watch it. If we on Twitter right now, to streaming, what's up to y'all too? Wherever else we streaming right now, shout out to y'all too. I feel lucky and blessed to have, and I feel that God is good to me because He gives me and us such great battles to fight. It's just such a great battle to have in front of us to fight. I mean, I feel blessed to have to be asked to get into this fight for the Drake family, and it is all about that. Sister Kelly, any final words, final thoughts you want to add here?
Yes, I first of all want to thank you, Chris, for allowing me to present in this space. And I want to thank CJEC for all of the work that you have done and continue to do for the African American community in California. But I am also extremely hopeful that we are on the right track and that we have the right people to move this forward. I'm especially grateful to be asked by George Fothery to partner with him in this exercise. And we are still in the fight, as Yaba said, and we're going to continue to try and do the best that we can to make sure that everyone has this opportunity. And I'd like to thank the UN for providing this forum. And that is everything from me. Thank you very much.
Your awesomeness precedes you, Sister Kelly. Your last final 2 seconds of words, I say 2 to 30 seconds of I'll say is I tell the team, I probably don't say this often as much anymore as I should, but I have told the team, and I will say it more often, that we're on. Of course, we're going to win. That's not a question. The question is what the path is and the journey is toward winning. And I tell the team we're just on the winning journey. This is what it looks like on the path and feels like on the path to the win. Everything that happens is something on the path to your win. Okay? So keep that in mind as we work. Okay? And with that, I want to thank everybody in the chat who had amazing questions. If we didn't get to your questions in the chat, apology. I know there were some questions that we kind of left hanging. We didn't get to. We have all the questions. We will be responding to the questions when we send out the after follow-up for you all here as well. I just want to thank everybody. Shout out to Tiffany and the team and the background holding us down with the Zoom. Shout out to the ETM Media family once again for the live streaming. Shout out to all the questions, everybody who popped on. Brother Jesse and the Colorado family and everybody, no matter where you are, the New York family, you already know. Thank you so much, Brother Devon. Thank you, brother, as always. All right, my brother for real. Thank you. And with that family, get back to your days, get back to your families. Remember, do something. So I'll tell the team too, remember, go be with the family, okay? Remind yourself of what you're fighting for. Remind us of what we, don't forget who we actually fighting for. And with that, it's 1 on the dot. And the answer is absolutely yes, Malika, absolutely yes. With 1 on the dot, damn, we good. We'll see you soon. Salute.
Please move item 7172 to the inactive file.
The recording has stopped. What did you know about bills not being brought to the floor? There were 2 critical reparations bills, Senate Bill 1403 and Senate Bill 13.
Forgive me, because there's over 1,000. I'm not very good at the numeric, but
it's gonna. The analysis said it's only a couple $1 million to stand it up. And his response was, we want to do it in a different way. We don't want to do it through creating a whole new bureau. We want to do it through the UC system.
So this is Assemblyman Mr. Bryan. He's mad I brought up the reparations vote. So he's preventing me from speaking. And he's trying to block my access here.
Madam Speaker, I ask that we take up file item 71, SB 1331.
If you decide to start your family tree even without the DNA, 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're gonna find your family.
A great number of African Americans can trace their lineage to the period of enslavement.
Lamert was developed by Walter H. Lamert, and in his designing this area, he actually had covenants to where they would not sell to black people.
I supported the bill all session.
You bring the bill.
Will you vote?
CLBC, can you give them a grade 1 to 10?
This current crop, as of now, it's a negative.
Vote for the bill, Mr.
Bring the bill.
Will you vote for the bill?
Bring it up.
Will you vote for reparations?
Bring it up.
I would love it.
Bring it up.
Let's vote for reparations together.
It's a spirit of anti-blackness, and we must call it out. And so I'm going to call out on August 31st, 2024, that the California Legislative Black Caucus, the majority of them, and the governor allowed the enemy to use them to try to keep us down and keep us as bottom class citizens.
Just think that all the other members have at least about 10 years left. So we're not going anywhere.
I've heard it's slightly changed, and some of the advocates who were part of the coalition last go around are now expressing concerns of whether or not they'll still be able to stand behind it if those changes are not corrected.
In so many years, it will hardly be no black folks left in California. We love y'all, we thank y'all, and we demanding reparations right now.
First of all, America, from the evidence that they gave us, you're guilty.
What happened on August 31st, 2024 was a betrayal.
We know that if we don't have our hand in this process as much as we possibly can, it can't be corrected from the outside. So in terms of our role isn't done until they're issuing the checks for our reparations.
The time for reparations is now.
Yeah, right now.